Now in this lecture, I just want to go and further discuss what empty elements or void elements are. So when we say empty elements, we have tackled this before. One of the examples of an empty element or a void element is the meta tag that we have here. And we can see that it doesn't have any closing tag. So it means that there are some elements in HTML5 or in HTML which are self-closing, which means that they don't have a closing element. So technically, when we say void elements, they are also, you can also call them self-closing. And when we say void elements, by definition, it doesn't have any content in between the start and the end tags. However, they can have attributes inside of them. The reason that they are called void elements because there will be no content. Instead, we use attributes inside of the opening and closing elements. So if we go and put an image tag here, this is one good example of a void element or an empty element. So technically, we don't have what we call a closing image tag. So instead, we put attributes inside of it. So instead of going and having a closing tag here, the content of the image tag that we will also be considering as an embedded content. So if you remember in our topic about the content model, this image tag here is an embedded content. Okay, I'm just going to include that comment here so at least you will be having some sort of reference. So here we use attributes. We have the source attribute and the height attribute and the width attribute, which are common attributes that we include into the image tag. So here we have those attributes that provides meaning to the instructions that we are giving to the browser on what the browser should be doing with this specific element. Once we go and save this and we put some alt here, so right now I would want to put at least 100 pixels here and another 100 pixels, and then inside of this is going to be a logo box. And if I save that and we look at the document that we have here and we refresh it, we are telling now the browser that we would want to go and let me just save it again, and then it's not showing up here, but if we go and there you go, we have it here. So if I go if we go to the box model here or the developer tools, we can see here that the image here is, let me just see it here. If we inspect it, we can see that there's an image now with an alternate text. So the alt attribute is pertaining to an alternate text if, for example, we haven't placed any image here yet. Now, if we want to go and link this image tag here that we have here to an image, we can go and use the name of the image that I've created specifically for this project so that we can have a logo of some sort. So it's the owl-logo.png that I made, and if I go and refresh this, now there you go, we have an owl image with a size of 100 by 100 pixels for the height and the width of that specific image. So we now have an owl here. So an image element is a void element. It is one of the void elements that are considered as an empty element or also known as an empty element. So other empty elements, guys, are let me just break them down here. So other empty elements will be the BR element. We also have the area element. We have the base element. We also have the call element, embed element. So you would see here, these are, I'm just going to show you here an example of what these elements are. So image, we already have that. Input element, we usually use this for forms. We also have the link element. If you remember, we have the link element here that we used. So it doesn't have any closing tag. Okay, so let me just go, and at least you'll have a more easy to view types of tags here. I'm just meta element. We also have here the param element. So we also have the source element. We also have the track element. So I'm just giving you an idea here on what are the different elements that are considered to be as void elements. So we also have some obsolete. We also have some obsolete empty elements, meaning these are no longer supported in HTML5. So that will be the command element. We also have the keygen element, as you can see there, and the menu item element. So these are mostly obsolete empty elements. So these are empty elements, everyone, and you might get confused with the term empty elements because sometimes we might encounter a paragraph, for example. Okay, let me just go here, and you might encounter a paragraph element that doesn't contain any content. So that means there's no content here, right? So you might get confused. Okay, so there's no content in between the opening and the closing tag. So that means this is an empty element. Again, it doesn't mean that the element doesn't contain any element content. It's already a void element. Okay, just keep that in mind. If the paragraph element that we know, which is not a void element or an empty element, that has an opening tag and a closing tag, it doesn't mean that this is a non-void element. So that this is a void element. It is still what we call a non-void element, meaning it's not an empty element. Okay, because it can still contain content. Meaning, let's say for example, I just wanted to have it, I just wanted to have an empty paragraph here for the meantime while I'm working with the content of the main content of the web page. But in the future, and I would already want to go and include content here. Okay, I want to put content here. I can still do that, and that will mean that this is still a non-void element because we are still using a closing tag here. Okay, I'm hoping that's very clear already. And a void element will not have any content and will only contain attributes. That's something that you just need to keep in mind. Okay, another term for void elements is empty elements or self-closing. That means when we say self-closing tag, if we will be working with XML, we will need to have a / inside all of these elements here. Okay, let me just make it a lot easier for us. So I'm just showing you here an example, so at least you'll have an idea that these are elements that we would want to have a self-closing tag, which is a / here. Okay, let me just... Okay, that actually made it more worse. So, okay, that's me. The / here is pertaining to self-closing tag. So technically, if you're asking a question, let's have a question here. Okay, is the ending / optional? Okay, so here's the answer for that. In HTML, in XHTML, also known as extensible hypertext markup language, okay, this self-closing the void element is required. Okay, number 2, for HTML 4.01, it is accepted by the W3C or World Wide Web Consortium, HTML validator, but it is not required, or it is technically not necessary. And number 3, we have here HTML5, which is the one that we're working on right now. It is totally not required. And the forward slash is optional. Okay, so let's all go and put this in a comment here. I just wanted to, at least when we save this, and you will have a reference in our code and the file that I will be sending you guys that you can download. Just remember that closing our empty elements will be needed for a stricter implementation so that it will be readable by XML parsers. It is recommended that you add the forward slash here so that it will be providing visual clues both to you and other developers who will be working on your project, and it will be very useful for readability purposes. So let's exactly do that here. So we have here our meta tags here. I'm going to put forward slashes here so at least we can implement it and practice having our empty elements having the forward slash.